As many of you know, a year ago I bought a 1997 Dodge Viper GTS to write about and make videos with. Now, as some of you know, a few weeks ago I sold it after nearly a year of Dodge Viper ownership. So today in this video I'm saying goodbye to my Dodge Viper. I'm going to sum up a year in the life of owning a Dodge Viper. And if you want to know more about the Viper ownership experience and what it was like for me to own my Dodge Viper, click the link below to go to autotrader.com/oversteer, where I've written a column about it. I'm going to start this off with a little review of everything I did with my Viper during the year that I had it. Then I'm going to give you my concluding thoughts on the Viper and what I thought of owning it. And then, since I've sold it, it's time to give the Viper a Doug score. To start, here's a look back at the things I did with my Viper over the last year. I started my Viper experience by flying to North Carolina and picking it up, driving it 500 miles back home to Philadelphia over 2 days in August 2016. This was a long trip in a car like the Viper, and I got my first taste of the Viper experience. In heavy traffic, on the open road, and sitting in the cramped interior, which had really comfortable seats and decent headroom but could barely contain my knees. Soon after, I did a little fuel economy challenge to measure its city-and-highway gas mileage to find out if I could reach the original EPA estimates. So I drove the Viper around Philadelphia for a few hours to measure its city fuel economy, and, well, things weren't pretty.
Okay, all right, here we go. Let me do the calculation here. And the moment of truth, the final result is 5.6 miles per gallon city we got today driving around town.
Then I got it out on the highway and hypermiled it all the way to Delaware. This time things were better, but still not great.
All right, math time. And the number is, 18.7. That's as good as it's gonna get. I can't do any better than that, 18.7.
A few weeks later, I taught my friend Britt how to drive a manual transmission in the Viper. She did great. We went over reversing and starting and even shifting gears, but then the radiator failed spectacularly and the car had to be towed. That was the Viper's first failure that required a tow. The second came a few months later when the cooling hoses also failed and the Viper broke down in the very same alley where I broke down in my Aston Martin over a year earlier. I was a little disappointed my shop didn't replace the cooling hoses when the radiator failed at first, but either way, the Viper was back on the street in no time, and I showed you all of its quirks. These are my 3 favorites. Next up is the windshield wipers, which for some reason operate one at a time. The only comparison I can make is it's like I Dream of Jeannie right before she activates her magical powers. The third brake light isn't just some random light in the middle of the window. Instead, it's the Viper logo. What is this car? Viper. What is this car? Viper. What is this car? Viper. The other crazy thing about the front of the Viper is the lack of an interior hood release. Let me repeat that. There is no interior hood release. It's only exterior. In other words, if you're ever walking through a parking lot and you spot a Viper and you want to check out that sweet V10, it's just one latch here and one latch here and you're in. Next, I took it out on the snow, which has become sort of an annual ritual here that really upsets people, even though I think it's hilarious. I drive it on the snow, I film a video, I have some fun with my friends sliding around, and then people in the comments tell me, "You should have had snow tires!" I get so mad. Get ready for an E63 wagon snow video this winter, along with more angry comments. I can feel it. Anyway, I then took my Viper to CarMax for an appraisal, which is always a funny little event, and they offered me...
In the end, the offer was $25,000. Yes! I got it perfectly! Do I know my CarMax wholesale trade-in appraisal process or what?
Not so good, especially considering I later sold it for $33,500 on Bring a Trailer, which equates to $35,000 with the buyer's premium. More recently, I compared my Viper to a newer Viper ACR. I tried to see if you could daily drive it, and I took it on a dyno to measure its horsepower, where the results were surprisingly good. 398.3 wheel horsepower, which translates to just under 470 brake horsepower. Not bad. It was an eventful year, but what did I think of owning a Dodge Viper? Actually, I liked it a lot. You told me to buy the Dodge Viper, and I listened to you. I went out and got it, even though I was a little bit nervous, honestly. I wasn't really sure if I would enjoy the Viper ownership experience, but in the end, I found there to be a lot of benefits, and of course, a few drawbacks. One of the main benefits is the cost. I paid something like $36,000 for my Viper, which
just really isn't all that much in the grand scheme of things when you consider how cool it is and how unique and how special it is. The drawback to that low price, of course, is that it kind of felt cheap. The interior especially is really cheap. There's big panel gaps everywhere and stuff squeaks and creaks and rattles. It is certainly not a European sports car when it comes to build quality. But another benefit was the fact that, yeah, it was cheap, but stuff was also cheap to replace. When my Viper broke down, when I had parts that I needed to get, everything was surprisingly inexpensive, both to buy the part and to pay for the labor to get it done. It just isn't that hard to work on. Which leads me to my next drawback, namely the fact that it breaks. For me, it broke twice, as you saw, which was a little bit disappointing. A lot of the Viper owners say that it's a pretty reliable car, and I have to admit, it is reasonably reliable as exotics go, but I didn't feel that when I was sitting on the side of the road those 2 times waiting for the tow truck. Another benefit, the Viper is so cool looking. I had models of this car when I was a kid. I had posters of Vipers. I mean, and then you have it in real life, and it's just awesome looking. Another drawback is the fact that it's kind of rumbly and loud. You start it up, it shakes at stoplights. It certainly isn't the smoothest car around, and it certainly isn't the most comfortable. But with that said, one more benefit is it's fun. It's no nonsense. You get in the car and you turn the key and yeah, it rumbles and it's loud and stuff is squeaking and creaking, but the truth is you didn't expect anything differently. The Viper doesn't make any excuses for what it is. You know going in that you're gonna have a car that's loud, a car that might kill you, a car that isn't gonna be the best construction, best put together, but that's kind of what's cool about it, and that's why you buy it. Nobody goes into the Viper ownership experience thinking that you're gonna get a Porsche. In the end, that was one of the main reasons I liked it. Even though I'm more into European sports cars, stable feel, solid driving experience, well put together interiors, I liked how straightforward the Viper was. You knew what you were getting, and that's what you were getting. I loved how it looked, and I loved that everybody on the street reacted to it in a positive way. You drive around a Ferrari and people think you're a jerk. You drive around in a Viper and everybody's giving you a thumbs up. I also loved the value proposition the Viper offers. I mean, $35,000 for basically an exotic car that everybody's gonna stare at, and the performance to go along with it. That's pretty cool. But on the flip side, I also found the Viper to be really uncomfortable. It was hard for me to fit inside, especially with my knee. The ride quality is just terrible. It is absolutely not a car if you live in a city or really anywhere near a city. I also didn't like how cheaply built it was. The benefit is that it's straightforward and cool and it rumbles and you get all that, but the downside is that it just doesn't feel that nice inside, which may have contributed to the reliability problems I had. It just is kind of cheaply built. Anyway, there are obviously pros and cons, but now it's time to get to the ultimate Viper conclusion. I'm gonna give it a Doug score.
Starting with the weekend categories and styling, you're nuts if you don't think this thing looks cool, especially in blue with the white stripes, and it easily earns a 7 out of 10. Acceleration is impressive, 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds, giving it a 7 out of 10. Handling is good, but I never thought it was great. Too much weight in the front, and the steering isn't direct or precise enough. It gets a 6 out of 10. Cool factor is high. It's much cooler than the average car with that huge wide front hood and those iconic colors, but still it's no Ferrari or Lamborghini, and it once again gets a 7 out of 10. Importance, it's a relatively significant car, and I suspect these will be pretty valuable one day, but right now it's not quite in the upper echelons and manages a 7 out of 10, if only for the defining high-performance American cars in the 1990s. Total it all up, and the weekend score is 34 out of 50. Next, onto the daily score. Starting with features and equipment, the Viper has a radio and keyless entry, not bad, but it doesn't even have power mirrors or basically any other modern feature, so it earns a 3 out of 10. Luxury measures comfort, and saying the Viper is uncomfortable would be an understatement. It probably deserves a 2 here, but I loved its comfortable leather seats, which brings it up to a 3 out of 10. Quality measures reliability and materials. Both aren't the best. Materials are fine but cheap, and reliability, well, at least it's not expensive to fix. It earns a 4 out of 10. Practicality is impressive at 9.3 cubic feet of cargo space, giving it a relatively high 3 out of 10. Finally, value. To me, it's hard to believe I bought my Viper for only $36,000 and sold it for only $33,500. Someday, these things are going to be worth a lot, and even right now, it's a lot of car for the money. It easily earns a 7 out of 10, though that isn't enough to bring its daily score higher than a mere 20 out of 50. Having owned this car for a year, I think that's exactly right. Anyway, add it all up and the total Doug score is 54 out of 100, placing the Viper exactly where I'd expect. It was a fun car, it was a good car, and I will miss it. The new owner is in New Jersey, and I hope he enjoys it as much as I've enjoyed driving it and you've enjoyed following along.